Hello, everyone, and welcome to a glorious, gorgeous day over here. I am looking out the window and to sound a little cheesy, I am just in love with the sun today. All right, we are just going to give it a couple of seconds so folks can log in. If you are new to the show, well, hello, my name is Sadie Uribe, and I'm the media producer for the Los Angeles Regional SBDC. The SBDC is a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country helping to stimulate economic growth through business advising and development. The LASBDC offers no cost services through funding provided by the U.S. Small Business Administration, SBA, and from the California Office of the Small Business Advocate. It's your tax dollars at work. The Los Angeles Regional SBDC network operates 7 service locations throughout Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. Our services are also offered virtually. We are here to help. We empower small business owners by offering tailored solutions through personalized one-on-one business advising, cutting-edge workshops, and comprehensive programs, all provided at no cost. We are dedicating to supporting your entrepreneurial journey every step of the way. Lori, I felt that one. I'm excited because I know that we have a first off show, so I am going to learn lots. We are going to learn lots today. So, Lori, big virtual hugs. I'm so happy to see you today.
I'm happy to see you too, Sadie, and thank you everybody for joining us. When we get the people joining us during the summer, that's when I'm really in awe because everybody's off vacationing and doing all kinds of things, and I expect no one to show up, and then you guys come. So I think that's awesome, especially our frequent flyers. I always love to see you here. So we've got a couple things that Oh, there's Emma. Good morning, Emma. By the way, Emma's going to be on next month. Everybody loves Emma's story. She has a fabulous story. I can't tell her story enough. I really can't. So you're going to have to wait to hear what that's all about. Well, let's get started with it because I got a bunch of things for today. So, first, as always, the grand announcement of what webinars I have coming up. And for the remaining month of June, I've got the Soul Prop LLC S Corp. Which one and why? I tell you, this is one of those topics that has more confusion and more incorrect information out there than any others. I love giving this because so many people don't know what they're doing and they think, oh, I got an idea. I need to get an LLC right away, or I'm getting an LLC to have better tax benefits than a sole prop. If you believe any of those to be true, check that out. Should you be charging your customer sales tax? What you need to know. This is a lot about economic nexus. Many people don't realize what economic nexus is, that you may have to charge sales tax when you are shipping out of California. And I just learned a brand new thing about drop shipping into economic nexus. So you're going to get an overview of that, especially if you're using Shopify and some of these online platforms. There's a chance that you may not be doing it correctly. So check that out as well. Coming up next week, we got Sue from the Modern Schoolhouse. This is a fabulous story, real time story, guys, because she is currently expanding, getting funding, everything. She is in the thick of it, as you say. So we're going to get the story as it progresses. Then starting July, I'm going to have Clarissa back on. Many people have seen Clarissa on before. She's another favorite. Number Lovers LLC. We always talk about many things, but I've asked her to talk a little bit more about this economic nexus dropship. She's who I went to find out more information on it because she used to audit sales tax records for the IRS. So she's very knowledgeable about it. I've also asked Clarissa to talk in depth about using spreadsheets instead of accounting software. I wanted her to go through that because I get so many questions on whether you have to use a software program. And she's created a cool little spreadsheet. So I wanted to also share that, plus the many topics that we always discuss when she's on the show. It's been too long. I haven't had her on the show for a while. Okay, today's links, today's little bit of information, and I'm going to just mention what it is, and then I'm going to take you to the actual website. And Sadie, of course, is putting these links in. I got to talk IRS right now, guys, because we got IRS things happening, and I know that a lot of the information that I share here, you don't come upon in other places. So we're going to talk about the situation, and it happens to a lot of clients, I know, because I talk to them, where you either miss the deadline or you can't pay the taxes. One thing I want to mention, and I learned this when I went through my enrolled agent training, and I wasn't aware of it. The penalties for not filing your tax return are higher than your penalties for not paying. I didn't know this. I'm sure many of you don't know this. So you think, oh, I can't pay. I'm not going to file. And the other thing is your statute of limitations is out the window. That doesn't occur when you miss filing. So it's better to file even if you can't pay because you're paying less. And then you can also set up payment plans, right? So this is also the different options that you can get with a payment plan. Once again, the links are there. And this page is really helpful from the IRS. It goes into, do I qualify? Can I set one up? I have to say from experience with clients, the IRS is more willing to work with you than you would believe them to be. I guess a way I can say it is I found in working with, like I said, the IRS through clients' issues, that they were more willing to work with the clients than I thought. In the end, they really want you to be setting up a payment plan. And what I found, once again, one last on this topic, is that in working with clients over the years, I find that when you're in a situation where you haven't filed in a long time or you haven't paid, you lose a lot of sleep over it. I've had people that I say, you know what, let's just straighten this out and get you on a payment plan because they'll work with you on a small payment plan and you could stop worrying about it. Because I don't think worrying about things do you any good. So that's why I wanted to share this with you to know there is options and choices out there for you. So with no further ado, whenever I talk about IRS stuff, I always say, okay, come on, guys, let's get in the fun stuff now because that wasn't fun, but it is part of life. You know what they say, the only two things you have to do is die and pay taxes. My mother used to say that all the time. However, I'm not sure if pay taxes is necessity, but I do think the dying is. But we'll go on to better topics right now. So I'd like to introduce my guest, first time on the show. Craig has over 15 years of experience in multi-location franchise restaurant ownership, and he has 12 years of experience with corporate finance at Union Bank. Craig holds an MBA from USC Marshall School of Business. Craig is passionate about identifying operational inefficiencies and leveraging analytical thinking to integrate new strategies, process, and procedures that impact revenues and profitability. Craig, welcome to the show.
Hello. Hi, Lori. How are you?
Hello. Okay, so first of all, I got to tell you, and oh, my regulars will know this. They'll totally know this. I'll get stuff in the chat when I say this. I know I will from my regulars. Okay, there's some lovely words I read here. I love processes, I love procedures, and I love profitability. I love
Ability.
knowing profitability. Those are my absolute favorite words. So I had to tell you that because, like I said, everybody knows that's all I ever talk about is know your numbers and know profitability. So I am so excited to have you on the show. We have so many directions we can go, but I love to ask this at the beginning. So when you were just a youngin and you were starting out in life, did you say, I want to get into knowing franchising of restaurants and work for Union Bank? I always ask this because I find very few people followed a straight pathway. It's usually all the experiences they pick along the way. So what were you going to be when you grew up?
Yeah, I wanted to be a doctor, a heart surgeon. That's what I started
Really?
in college when I was pre-med, and then I was like, chemistry weeded me right out, and I went into, I couldn't get into the business school, and I was like, what do I major in? And so I was like, I want to learn how to speak and write. So I majored in English and then minored in business, and then kind of knew I wanted to get into something in business. And I kind of had two interviews out of college. I had an interview with a bank and an interview with a marketing advertising agency. And I
Okay.
didn't get that job, but I got the job at the bank. So I just kind of went in. So
Okay, so I gotta ask. You gotta ask this.
yeah,
Okay, this is a how did your family feel when you gave up being a doctor and went for another? I gotta believe that that was a interesting
it,
conversation around the dinner table.
yeah, I mean, they were pretty kind of, whatever I wanted to do as long as I
Wonderful.
wasn't going out of college and, staying in college.
Yeah.
But my dad was a judge, so he
Ah,
actually refrained from me to go into law school. So I kind of gravitated toward business. I was always numbers driven and analytically driven, so that's kind of where I kind of focused on. And once I got into the bank, they have a great management training program that I
yeah.
got into, and I was there for 12 years.
Wow. Okay. So there's so many interesting things to walk
Yeah,
down. So here's something in my history. So when I first went to college, everybody knows me as the finance person and the tax person. I went to be a medical technologist. Now, yes, I know, I don't even talk about this. I did not even know what a medical technologist was. But as many people do know on the show, I grew up in the country. I wasn't in the country, I was podunk. I was that country, right?
yeah.
My sister that was 13 years older than me went to school to be this lab technologist, and my mother kind of said, well, you've got two choices. You either stay on the farm and pick beans or you go become a lab technologist. So I was like, well, let me weigh these two out, and so I went that course, and I was 2 years into it, and I'm like, oh my God, you have to draw blood and people are sick. This is like terrible. And all I wanted to do is be one of those people who carried a briefcase. I can't relate. I just wanted to carry I thought the people who carried a I didn't know what was in the briefcase, but
You
I knew
just
it
wanted.
was important. Oh yeah, I knew that when you carried a briefcase, you were in, that was the thing to be. So
That's
that
amazing.
it's right. Now, so after I got out of MBA school, that was when I kind of, started becoming fascinated with numbers and finance. I decided that I needed to get a job at a bank just to be able to know how bankers looked at financials. So I spent, a little bit over a year. It wasn't something I planned on doing very long, just to learn what it was like to be a banker. I found being a banker was such not a good fit for me because I had already been a consultant for so many years where you roll up your sleeves and you dig in. I realized banking was all about numbers and you looked at numbers complete. Let's say it this way, and you tell me if you resonate or it totally doesn't. Like I said, I always tell
Yeah.
my guests, never agree with me. I'm always speaking from my experience. But I found that banks look at numbers totally different than entrepreneurs and the way they make entrepreneurs think they're looking at numbers. And my first experience was taking the first financials back, and the underwriter said in 2 seconds, I'm still like trying to read the financials. No. And that's when I learned that banking is really a sales job in many ways. That's my personal experience. What was your experience in banking?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me it was a good learning experience because I was so young. It was my first job, but I agree with you. I think banks look at the financials in a different respect, right? They're looking to see, can you pay this loan back? And what are
Yeah.
all the risks associated with your business? And how do we mitigate those risks? So it's ultra conservative. It's not entrepreneurial in any sense that,
Um,
yes, they want to see this growth of your business so that you're generating more income. But when they're when we're underwriting a transaction, it's very, conservative and, different scenarios and what's the worst case and what's the best case.
Also, what I was amazed that I learned in banking is that there's so much that goes into the person's experience, the credit appetite. If the bank just lost a loan in some industry, they don't want to be back in that industry because they got, so there's a lot that goes into it about the personal experiences of the bank and the underwriters that I was surprised. I didn't expect that part of it.
Yeah, I can, there was, I was in different areas of the bank, and towards the end, I was in a specialized lending unit where we focused on media, entertainment, and telecom industry
Oh,
specifically. And the telecom industry had this huge boom in the late 90s, and that was the majority of transactions we did. But then it went down kind of
yeah.
early 2000, and so the banks, like you said, it's like no more in this industry. And part of what I did is I managed a portfolio of those assets to try to either get them out of the bank or turn them around. So it is, there's banks can switch, and there's guidelines that they adhere to, and then they change the guidelines, and
Yeah.
it's
It's
different for
interesting.
each bank too.
So now, when we speak about restaurant and franchising, especially restaurants, it seems to me like you're in a cubicle in a bank and you come out of the connection isn't there. Did you go right from the bank to the restaurant? Fill us in on that part. How did that happen?
So as a, having your first job and being there for 12 years, you're bored. I was in this environment of corporate America that, especially in the finance and investment
Yeah,
banking world, it's in the late 90s. It's very tough, and it's not, this was before, everything that people are going through now. It's just the environment was not a good fitting environment for me. I was wanting more kind of entrepreneurial aspects and doing things on my own. I wanted to start my own business, and I started towards the end at the bank. I started going to get my MBA at night. So I was working and getting my MBA, and everything I
okay.
focused on when I was getting my MBA was entrepreneurial. And I focused on the food space and bar space because I was passionate about food. I've always been passionate about food. I'm Italian, like amazing family members that cook. I love to cook. So it was kind of something I was leaning towards that creative side because I'd been doing this
Yeah,
mundane
the
corporate job
pendulum.
for so long.
Yeah, absolutely. So then how did you launch into the restaurant business? Where did you enter it?
So I, was doing different projects in MBA school, and then just focused when I was talking to people and immersing myself, thinking about a restaurant or a business. I was talking to different people, and people recommended, hey, what about a franchise? You don't have the experience. The franchises will give you that experience, and that will give you the opportunity to maybe start another concept after you've mastered this franchise. And my stepfather had owned a chain of retail bakery cafes in Northern
Okay.
California. So he was a big mentor in that world. And so I could go to him with questions and immerse myself kind of in that industry. And I there's this concept, it's called the counter. And it was literally 2 blocks away from my partner and I's house. And we would go there like probably every other week. I mean, it was new, it was so good. And I loved the concept. And I just kind of, they had just started franchising, and I dived into kind of researching and talking to them. And we resulted in buying the franchise.
You bought the franchise. Oh,
Well,
wow.
I mean,
You
we
bought into a
bought
unit
into it and
franchise,
an
right?
agreement to build out a
Yep.
certain amount of
Yep. So you
locations.
basically jumped in and you jumped into it. So what ended up happening? How I don't know about the counter, but I have Chris says I love the counter. Someone who knows about
Yeah,
the counter. So where was this? And walk us through. I'm fascinated. So what
yeah.
happened next?
So the counter at the time, this was probably around 2007, 2006
Okay.
when the concept was growing. So it was an initial concept that centered in, first location was in Santa Monica, and they maybe had about 5 or 6 locations around um, between LA and Northern California, and they were expanding and they were starting to franchise. And they got kind of big in the sense that Gail of Oprah and Gail was doing a burger tour around the US, and the counter kind of popped up and it got its kind of
Okay.
craze, and there was this big momentum. And the whole thing at the time was customization. You can go in and build your burger. You get a sheet and you build it however you want, but the quality of the ingredients are fresh. So you can make a bowl, build on top of different salad blends, or you can add this, check your cheeses, 10 different cheeses, 20 different toppings, premium toppings, and you can make your own. And they serve beer and wine. And it was a full service, fast casual restaurant. And at the time, customization was just starting. And Subway was kind of the OG customization, restaurant, but this was something kind of new. And so people gravitated toward the concept.
Oh my God, this is so interesting. So when going back down, today's about my country roots, and I want to get into this customization part. But when I was growing up in the country, we didn't have fast food. We didn't have any restaurants. We had none of that.
Yeah.
Like one little tavern that also served fried fish, and the farmers came in with their booths. That was my upbringing. Okay, right? Picture that,
Yeah.
right? Oh, but then I had TV, and my brother used to take me into town every once in a while to McDonald's, which thank God I wasn't near those when I was growing up. But that's not the story, okay? So
Get
he
it
would
out, Lori.
get yeah, he would get the burger and it had a pickle on, and I hated pickles, so he would take it off and say it's off,
Yeah,
but you taste the pickle juice. The pickle juice is still on the burger, right? It doesn't fail, right? So when Burger King came out and they said we make it your way, I was like, "Oh my God, I get it without the pickle." And I was so excited. My mother took me to Burger King and I said, "No pickles." Okay, where am I going with this? Many years later, I was doing CFO turnaround and I was trying to deal with kind of an error, and you'll see, and I'm going to have you run with this, where
yeah,
customers were demanding customization, but the pricing more that would require from a procedural perspective standardization, right? And
right.
this was the problem with this one company. They were getting where they were getting price cut, but they were customizing everything. And I thought to myself, how do you create customization for the customer from a marketing perspective and standardization from efficiencies, right? And I remembered, okay, that's the ultimate question, right? And I was sitting there, okay, a long time ago, it was a whiteboard, I was drawing out as a, CFO turnaround trying to figure this out. And all of a sudden I'm sitting there going, you can't. And in my head, I heard two whole beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions, sesame seed bun. Burger King, right? And I
Yeah,
realized that they created a perception in marketing of standardization or customization, but they still had procedures. And I think that is the key when you're trying to be price competitive is to understand that sometimes the marketing creates the customization and you may charge a little bit more, but you better have good processes and procedures. And I bet you that in the counter's experience, you can speak to that. And I think at this point, and I'm going to let you run with this, I don't care what your company does. I think understanding the mechanisms of creating customization to the customer and internal standardization for profitability and efficiencies applies to every company independent of size. Your thoughts on what I just said?
yeah. I mean, to the biggest thing of the marketing aspect of what made the counter so great was kind of what is in the demise of why locations are not as many around now. I think because this efficiency, every time we had to enter an order for an individual burger, you had literally have to add every single topping. So you have servers
Right,
that are sitting at a POS going boom, 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 instead of saying, I just want the old school cheeseburger. I just want
right,
so it takes time. That's more labor. Then you have all these different menu items that you have to provide and the food costs for all of that instead of what's happening now in the restaurant industry where people are streamlining their menu items and you're using the same ingredients in one menu item as you're doing in another to use as minimal menu items as you can because of food costs and how they're increasing. So as much as it was great at the time and people were into it, now there's so much customization options. There's so many more options, but there's, the profitability and the
right.
efficiency is lacking. You're 100%.
This is fascinating. So, two things. First of all, a shout out to the audience. This is a spoiler alert. I didn't say this at the beginning, but I want you to know that Craig is a fellow advisor at the
Yes.
SBC, which you saw. So, Sadie is going to put the information in on how you can reach out and schedule an appointment with him. So, you know that. So, Craig, this
Hi,
is
Laura. Annie. Annie's on.
Oh, Annie's here. Awesome. Awesome. That's excellent. Shout out to Annie. There she is. So, Craig, what I find that we're talking about is really fascinating because I also wanted to bring this up is now as an SBDC advisor, you're talking to businesses across the board and a lot to startups, if I'm not mistaken, right? And give me your opinion on this. As you were saying about how the counter had so many different customization and menu options that possibly led to their downfall, right? Well, with that, I'm seeing a lot of new businesses where I have to tell them, lessen the SKUs. You're all over the place. SKUs meaning so many products or services
Yeah.
because they want to service so much and it's actually harming them. I know
Yeah.
we're still talking about the same thing, but I feel like it's so important for our audience to hear the importance of just having a few items and really
Yeah.
honing in on them. Talk about your experience that you've had with this, especially with startups and what you're noticing as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think in today's food and restaurant space, there's so many more obstacles for a business to be profitable and successful. I mean, you have this, first of all, increasing food costs that are just astronomical compared to, 5 years ago. You have these labor costs that are, in Los Angeles, minimum wage now is close to $18 and $20 in fast food restaurants. So, there, and rents, for brick and mortar spaces are through the roof. So you have so many more different obstacles now that are bringing down that overall net profit. And this is where I come in, because I took my finance background to kind of implement that into restaurants. And a lot of restaurant owners are passionate about their business, passionate about what they're doing, but they don't focus on the financial aspects of things. So I'm helping those types of people and the clients that I'm dealing with. And from my experience, I always recommend start small. Do not start with a brick and mortar space, because once you have that space, you have all these fixed costs. You have all these costs that, you're just starting this brand, right? So you start small, like maybe go to farmers markets or do pop-ups at different restaurants. Do something where you determine what products or SKUs, like you're
Yep.
saying, that are
Yep.
selling and what people like, and then grow this base of, kind of customer base, and then go into a small scale brick and mortar, or start a food truck first, or
Right.
do something, because you really want to minimize those startup costs that you have to incur starting a business. So that's kind of what I recommend when I'm dealing with these clients. I want to start a food restaurant. I'm like, whoa,
Yeah.
this is what you have to deal with, just so you know. And I'm very transparent, and you know, being and doing this for 15 years, I, can honestly say I would not start another restaurant concept unless it had a specific model with, these, what I see, like these smash burger places. They have like single, double fries, like In and Out. How's it In and Out been
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
successful? Their menu
Yeah.
is just cheeseburger, double, fries, shakes. So
Yeah.
sorry, I'm talking a lot.
No, no, this is what
I'm
no, I'm not, I
passionate.
know it's making complete sense. And I think what I find so fascinating too is
Ghost kitchens, yes, Caesar,
that we're going
sorry.
to talk
Ghost
about that in a
kitchens is
minute. Yes,
huge. That's
I am.
another
I got
outlet.
that. I got that on my list. We're going to go there. But before we do, we're going there. We're going to talk all about ghost kitchens and everything. But I want to really emphasize the start small, because Craig, I feel like this is something that's missed by the smaller companies. I talk about it a lot, and I talk about how in a small little country town, somebody started a little general store and then it took off, and so they started another little one, or they started this. This is how companies grow in reality. But it's my belief that our entrepreneurs, I'm going to say, are being fed a line of garbage through social media, where I have people that start out with saying, I have an idea, and then I'm going to franchise, and then I'm going to be international, and it's all
Yeah,
within one topic. And I always have to, I get exasperated and I say, just figure out what you're selling to whom and how. Start with how you're going to get a customer. I feel as though our entrepreneurs are being falsely led down this pathway of thinking so big right at the
yeah,
beginning. They're failing to see the details. Now, I always tell my guests, you can totally disagree with what I'm saying, but you hit a key element that I talk about a lot with this start small. Can we just spend one more second and chat
yeah.
about that across the board? Give me your thoughts on are you hearing so many entrepreneurs across the board way too big thinking before they thought small to how to create it?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what I see with clients in various industries, other industries that I deal with. So I help at the SBDC with clients developing their business plans and then accessing capital as well, not
Mm.
just the food and restaurant space. So when I'm dealing with their business plans, I'm like, you have all these products and services, right?
Yeah.
So how are you going to achieve success in all of these? Start small with, you know, whatever you are experienced and have that focus on and see, and then expand. And to be honest, that's what the counter with their growth. They started in a certain regional market, and then they started expanding in out of state places, actually foreign, in Europe, and they weren't focusing on a right strategy of, kind of like what In and Out does. They take a city, they master it, they then move to the next state. And there's a logic why you do that at a certain pace. So yeah, I 100% agree with that, and I see that with the majority of clients that I'm dealing with.
I do too, and I think that another thing I try to express to them is they're trying to emulate corporations that have to serve so many because they're fighting for thin margins and market share. I always say one of the wonderful things about an entrepreneurial venture, you don't need a million customers.
Mhm.
Just get a few good paying ones and call it a day, So they get into this that they have to be servicing everyone, everything all day long, and it's not true. That actually harms them. So yeah, I'm glad we're having this conversation
Yeah.
because I talk about it so much. Get a price point, get something proven, get a concept proven, explore it, and then see where it takes off.
Well, and that expansion, if you have that product that, in the food space, the two things I always was told and what I tried to preach by was the two things you can control. You can control your food quality and then the guest experience. And if you're doing that in a certain area, things are gonna grow and expand exponentially as you're providing that service that the customers want.
So true, so true. Now I want to get bigger into franchising as we go down the
Yeah.
road, but I want to start small first. So what I want to do, and we're going to go through ghost kitchens and stuff like this. A lot of clients, and I would assume several in our audience, is dealing with some kind of food-based product, right? And I don't know about you, but I hear a lot of confusion, and I'm not an expert in this space. I know just enough to be dangerous. When it comes under the cottage food industry, when it
Yeah.
doesn't, and when you can go to the farmer's market without a certification and all that. And I'm not trying to get into the details, but just
Details.
an overview of I just want to make some brownies and sell them somewhere. What do I have to start thinking about? Not brown, you know what I mean? Just some food.
Yeah.
Like what are it's a weird world to navigate, I find.
Yeah, and that I see a ton with clients, and yeah, you want to sell brownies. You can do that out of your house with a cottage permit, and now there's the Miko permit that just came out where you can
Talk
actually,
about that. I've been hearing people
yeah,
talk about the Miko. Nobody knows about it. So please elaborate. What in the world's the Miko and how do you spell it?
MEHKO. And I'm
I
not,
know people will ask
things
that,
are
so I
still
thought of
like
it.
changing, it's just starting, but essentially it's, the cottage permit allowed people to basically do baked goods or
Yep.
candy items that
Yep.
didn't have any dairy, didn't need a certain kind of shelf life
Right.
refrigeration aspect to their products. And the cottage permit allows you to, I think it's 100,000 in sales that you could do under the roof of your house. And you basically are like operating your space as, your home kitchen, and you'll have a health department come in and check out your space. So that's what it started out. And then people were like, well, I want to, prepare, maybe it's prepared meals or catering or doing, actually cooked food with dairy and, things that a typical restaurant would do that you could do out of a ghost kitchen. But this is allowing you to do that up to a certain amount of revenues. I don't know the actual annual revenues. I think it's close to 100,000 as well. But
Okay.
this allows you to do it. You go in and there's a process of getting certified with your home kitchen. And, it allows these small businesses to kind of, if you want to, do prepared meals and do catering and kind of get your brand going, it's a great way to do it. And then, kind of if you're not able to do that, you have to basically abide by the health standards and get a commercial kitchen to where you're prepping things and storing things, to do it on a smaller scale. So this helps these small business owners do it at home and not have to pay the rents of those ghost kitchens or commercial kitchen spaces.
Perfect, and I got a couple different places we're going packing with that. So let's
Yeah.
go into commercial kitchens and ghost kitchens. They're not
Hmm.
the same, they're different. Why would you use one and let's just tell us about ghost kitchens and commercial kitchens.
Well, and again, I'm not the expert as per se, but the ghost kitchen allows you to actually operate your business and have people or drivers like third party delivery drivers come in to the ghost kitchen and pick up your orders. So you can actually operate your business out of a ghost kitchen. And
And it's private
let's
label
say,
your
yeah,
stuff.
you can
Yeah.
say I'm Craig's Burger Smash Burgers and start a delivery only or catering business, which is profitable because catering doesn't allow you to, have this huge labor and you through the ghost
Yeah.
kitchen, you're really just paying for that and renting that kitchen space. So the upfront costs and the ongoing costs are minimal. And a lot of people do ghost kitchens because it allows you to kind of test your market, test your product, and see what's selling and see what's not selling and kind of change. And then once you've reached a certain scale, maybe that's when you open your food truck or open your brick and mortar small location. So it's a great stepping stone for people to start that. And then the commercial kitchen is more, I need a space to prep. It's a lot of times for like caterers or people that don't want to kind of spend all of that much money with the ghost kitchen because a ghost kitchen is, you have to pay a monthly rent. So this allows you to kind of say, okay, I need a few hours here, or I need that space from a health permit perspective that I'm prepping my products and services that I'm going to be, either selling through catering or whatnot. But I don't need this physical ghost kitchen to actually have POS systems and, drivers coming in to pick up, if
Got
that
it.
makes sense.
It totally does. It totally does. And I want to go into one area here, but I have to say, so going back to I'm talking about my childhood today. So my mother baked, right? And so she
Hmm.
actually had a small catering company. She did wedding cakes and she catered and she also made cookies and stuff and sold them at the farmer's market, which she made me also go to the farmer's market and sell. That was my first sales job, etc. But it's so funny because I think about it. My mother did all this out of her kitchen. I know there was
Yeah.
no certification at the time. She
Yeah.
didn't have a business license. She got paid in cash and she stuck most of the money in between the steaks in the freezer. She was a depression era person, right? And so I was just thinking, my mother had this big thing and, she didn't pay any taxes and had no business license. She's dead. They can't come after her, right? But yeah, that's how hers, it's gotten so complicated over the years
Yeah.
on that from the beginning of it. So where I want to go with it, and this is something I always, like I said, this is across the board for everybody. It's funny we're here because I was thinking about almost talking about this in my beginning today, and that is
Yeah.
having someone who is just selling the brownies at the farmer's market realize when they price those brownies, they have to make it high enough so the profitability is there if they expand and suddenly are absorbing cost in a ghost kitchen, absorbing cost in any of that. I see so many people start out with a product that's not even a food product. Then they go to distribution. They got to have special labels when they sell in this. They didn't price it high enough to begin with. People got used to that price. They have a hard time increasing it. And now they suddenly increase sales. They're everywhere. They got bragging rights and no money.
Yeah.
Throw, throw that in.
I mean,
Yeah.
hopefully that, that people look at that early on and, I would hope they would be able to make that transition, but if they can't, then
Yeah.
that's not good. I mean, it's the first thing I go through with clients is recipe costing and what's your cost of goods sold and what's your profit margin. That's the first step. And then it's okay, what are the operating expenses outside? What are, the market fees, the like you said, packaging, all the everything. And a lot of people don't understand that process. And it's I always on my webinars and clients, it's so important to understand that. And um, it's not rocket science. It's not
No.
that difficult.
Yeah.
Just people are focused on other areas. They're experts, they want the food and the ingredients and all this stuff. But I always try to empower people. You're only going to be more successful. You're going to, your business is going to be more profitable. And it's just, you need to focus on the numbers. And that's
It, it's so
my
true.
banking that I just
Yeah.
always that's why I was successful in the restaurant industry. And
It's,
other counters weren't because they weren't focused. And that's part of franchising that we can go into the cons.
yeah, we're
But
going there
it's
next. Yes, we're going
yeah,
there. And it's amazing to me how many people do not know their actual accurate cost or cost. I
no,
mean, I every day I'm going, how in the world can you sell and not know how much it costs you to sell and the number of units you need to sell to cover your overhead and have money left over? And as Chris is saying in the chat, Chris always knows my thing, otherwise you'd be more tired and more broke, right, Chris? Yeah, more tired and
yeah,
broke. I'm like, oh, so you want to sell more and be more tired and more broke. But I can't not stress to people enough. And I swear, Craig, 80% of the SBDC clients I talk to don't know how much it actually costs them to produce. From a banking and finance, that's mind-boggling. That's mind-boggling to me.
Well, and that's why we're here, right? That's why
Oh.
these services are here. So, I mean, a lot of people don't know about it, and it's so important to take advantage. It's free, right?
No, I know. So let's go into franchising and the good, bad, and ugly and take it from both sides of being I because I've
Yeah,
dealt with both sides where one of them is the person buying into a franchise and the other one is the company trying to franchise whatever it is. I've been on both
yeah,
sides of that. And one of the things that I've come across or became aware of is it's kind of portrayed to be, oh, it's a slam dunk. You got a franchise, you get it, you're in, it's good to go, and it's the safest business to buy and all that. I don't see that always to be true. So give us just start us wherever you
yeah.
we should start on this topic.
I mean, I think initially when my partner and I first looked at the franchise, you're going through the documents and you're excited and you don't know any better. And they say it's called the FDD, Franchise Disclosure Document, which is
Okay.
kind of what they give everybody, and it tells you everything about the franchise. It gives you, what the royalties are, what the fees are, what the startup costs are typically, and what the financial performance, and that's key. When you're starting out, you want to underwrite essentially and do due diligence and all of that. And so when we did it, we just kind of assumed, that
Yeah.
what they were showing in this FDD was accurate as far as it's going to cost X amount to build out the space. And they give you ranges like low end, high end, and they say the average, income statement is, low end, high end. And what you need to do, and what I tell people now, which I didn't wasn't as knowledgeable about and didn't focus on much because, you know, I was new, but really talking to other franchisees
Yes.
and talking to other people in the franchise to see how accurate these estimates are, because financially you have to pay between 7% and 10% in royalties. So right off the bat, your margins are declined by that much. So your profitability is way lower in a franchise. And why it is that you're banking on this already established brand and already established market and competition that, you don't have to deal with that. But in this new growing franchise, we saw a lot of issues. Our build out costs ended up being probably double what they were
Ouch.
projecting.
That's not a good way to
Um,
start.
the financial performance was nowhere near accurate.
Yeah.
So that's why we had a 6 location build out that we were supposed to do. We only built out 2 locations based on what we had experienced, because we were profitable, but not to the extent that they were telling us we would be. So that was an issue. And then you're part of this network of other franchisees, and you're looking at how do they operate their business, because it does affect yours. So if you have operators
Yep.
that aren't focused and run their business, we had a location that wasn't owned by us within 4 miles, and we constantly had customers come to us saying, I will never go to that location. They're horrible operators. The food quality is bad. So you're relying on other franchisees for your brand. So
For the
that's
branding,
an issue.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, where
And
and
then
going back to your first point, don't lose your
yeah.
thought, please, but your
Sorry.
first point, don't lose your thought to keep going. I see a lot, of course, I'm seeing the ones that are in trouble, but I see a lot of people that bought in a franchise and said exactly what you're saying. What they were told as far as how profitable they were going to be was not even close. And as they got more involved and met the other individuals and got friendly and talked with them, they found out they were not either. And I bring this up because after COVID, it seems like, especially in the last year or so, I'm getting a lot of calls from people who want to buy a business now. And
Yeah.
always looking at franchises thinking it's the most safe and secure, and it's not. Nothing is good or bad, it needs research
Yeah.
to develop it. And so that's a really cool point that I wanted to bring out on that is you really can't just say, okay, I'm here, I'm just jumping in your arms and you're going to hold me safe. It's not like that, is it?
Well, and holding you safe, that's what you think. They're gonna take care of you, they're gonna support
Yeah.
you, and they're gonna be there. And this was a new company. There was no support. We had zero support. We had to do all of it on our own. So you need to research that when you're looking into franchising. And those are the things we experienced through the process. So, you know, fortunately, we were able to adapt, and based on our skills, we were able to make the business successful because it was such a good product. And our locations were doing great, and we were focused on our employees. We were doing the things right, and then um, the growth of your franchise is super important too. How are they going to grow this brand? And like I said earlier, this was small. They were trying to get the money up front by going to all these different areas and regions. They weren't focusing on specific regions and investing the money back into the business and growing it the right way. So that was partly it. So when you're researching franchises, you really want to dig deep into the financials first of all. And really, I tell clients, like, get financials from other franchisees and request these documents, because I tell them it's probably double what you're going to have to spend. Like, I tell them to you can't expect this to be accurate, and it's across the board, I think, with a lot of franchises.
And not that the corporations don't care about the individual succeeding at all. I don't mean it to that degree, but you have to realize, and I've been on their side as well as a consultant, their sales is getting more people to sign up into the franchises. That's how they're making money now. And
They
they get
get
those percentage no matter what. And you go out, they just get someone else. So they're not as engaged in growing your business as they pretend to be, because their business grows by getting more. It's kind of like a multi-marketing level type thing in a way of the mentality. I'm not trying to be that disrespectful of that industry, but you got to be really conscious about what is the corporation's interest in this. It's getting additional people to sign up.
And a good way to do that is to look at, and not to, like you're saying, not to say all franchises are
Oh,
like that, but a lot of them are. And
yeah.
a good way to kind of figure that out is if there's any lawsuits against them, and see how the number of lawsuits, because that's a good indication of kind of issues with the franchise. And yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's you learn, right? And so through this process, we learned kind of how a restaurant is run, what the benchmarks you need to be, and kind of what the model needs to
Yeah.
be. So it was a great learning experience for sure.
And what I always find is an interesting conversation to have financially on paper, is what I mean by that, with someone who
Hmm.
wants to buy in a franchise, is to do a what if you started it from scratch? Because, see, they have the belief that starting it from scratch, I don't have the branding, I don't have the reputation, and they
Yeah.
think that that's like scary and has no chance of succeeding because this is already in existence. And I think it's just a comfort zone I'm buying into. They're going to help me, they're going to handhold me. But I think it's really good to weigh out, what about starting from fresh? Because you can start small, you have more flexibility, you have more agility. Do you get into those kind of weighing the pros and cons of just starting whatever you want to do, whether it's a restaurant or whatever your franchise they're looking at, versus buying into one, and how to measure the pros and cons of each?
Are you saying, do I do that with
Yes.
clients?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, typically the clients are already kind of interested in what they're wanting to do, and I don't really add a franchise to it, because like you said, I'd rather them, start this on their own, and based on their experience that I kind of gauge, I could say, okay, if I do mention, potentially a franchise, but again, it's looking
What
into
about
that
buying
franchise.
into a franchise is what I meant. Like, if I'm saying I'm buying into this restaurant and I'm buying into this franchise and here's the fees, also look,
Oh,
yeah, so I
oh
actually,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
No, I'm
that like,
like
yeah,
they after a call with me, they're like, "Oh," because I tell them all the negatives and all the
yeah.
cons of the franchise and financially. And why don't you start small? Why don't you just, do this to see, and this is a more profitable kind of venture. These are the cons, but I can't tell them what to do.
Right, right.
But I totally do.
Educate them on the options because like I said, I think it's another one of those, disbeliefs where they have bought into this being so safe and secure because it's in existence that they have false beliefs. So I try to always,
Yeah.
I don't want everybody to make their own decision, but I try to bring
Yes.
more information to the table so they can look at it. What are some of the, and if I just say it this, the scary terms of a contract? Every contract and agreement has a couple things that always stand out as the scary
Yeah.
things. Well, in franchising, and if I was buying into a franchise, what are some of the things that kind of can come back and haunt you later if you're not conscious of them at the beginning?
Well, I think definitely like the fees, so the royalty fees, how that's structured. Typically, you have a royalty fee and then what they call a marketing fee.
Yeah.
Um, and so you want to make sure that's in line, with the industry. You're not getting overcharged. Then I think some other terms might be the way that you can get out as far as selling the
Yep.
business and making sure you can go through a process of assigning it based on the buyer and certain financial backing or credit that the buyer has. So you want that ability to get out of it, and then the term, right? How long is your franchise agreement? And then one big thing was being having to update the inside of your franchise, the restaurant space, because
Okay.
we were there for a period of time, and within the first, I think it was 10 years, they required us to make changes, and that cost a
And
big
that's your
amount of
cost,
money.
right?
So
Yeah.
you kind of want to maybe negotiate a certain amount or a time period. So those are typical, big. And then the fees, like once you
Yeah.
renew, what's the franchise fee to renew your franchise agreement?
It's just
And
like
I,
signing the loans. You always say like with everybody signing those idle loans, that's one of the things that I was saying is if you want to sell the company, you cannot transfer that loan. You have to think, and so many times when people are starting something, they don't want to think about the end. It's almost like
yeah,
taking a risk to put it in their thought that they may have to close or sell or anything. But I think you really have to look at, okay, if I get in, how do I get out? What is that process? I think that's a key point that you're bringing up there.
and you're tied to a lease too. So
Yeah.
I try to tie it with the lease terms too. You're tied to a lease that you're also in this franchise agreement as well.
Now, another thing that I've noticed in these contracts, or I should say, not necessarily in the contracts, but in the agreements, they have a team. It could be a team of marketing, a team of accountants, a team of bookkeeping, a team of software. And I've seen this coming in as a CFO and turn around, and I'm like, why are you using this software? It's the pits. I can't even get a report. Oh, that's what our franchise has us use. Or these are the meetings we use, or these are this. So once again, safety and security. Oh, look, they got all these professionals to help me. And then a lot of times seeing that those professionals weren't ones that you would have vetted and hired on your own as well. Is that just my personal experience with a few, or do you see that as also something to consider? Who is being forced upon you as these benefits of being involved in the arrangement?
Yeah, for sure. You'd want to know that. I mean, if our franchise was pretty open to allowing us to kind of modify based on what we researched as far as pricing, and specifically too they require specific vendors for food
Yeah.
products, and I get that they want
Right.
the
That
same
makes sense.
product, but we were able to kind of get the same product with different vendors, and they were able to work with us. So any route I would take to decrease my costs, I took it, and I would rather get slapped on the hand than not. And I rarely, do what you need to do. It's your business. You're
Yeah.
paying them this fee. You need to do what's best for your business. So I recommend just kind of pushing the envelope and seeing what happens.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And like I said, I saw a lot of them where they had like the entire marketing team and they're paying for reimbursement on marketing, but the marketing wasn't that good. And then the owners were paying Okay, yeah, I hit something. Go
Yeah.
on, go.
No, so this 1% that you're paying in these
Right.
royalty fees for marketing, we would have to request an audit every year because we didn't know what the hell they were using it
Yep,
on.
that's what I
And
saw.
they were paying their salaries to these marketing people to market the corporate, and we got none of the local
Yeah.
marketing aspect of it. So they weren't doing anything in Los Angeles. So that's a huge, you can request an audit to see what's happening, and usually they'll delay on that. But again, our franchise was a different, I'm not saying they're all like that.
No, and I'm not either, but kind
Yeah.
of what we're doing is we're talking about the things to do the due diligence because like
Yeah.
I even had one that was like I can't think of it's not it's not this brand, but you know how there's certain brands that like are franchise spas or a massage therapist or something like that.
Hmm.
This was somebody who owned one of them, like a nail salons. You see that as well. And I've
Yeah.
gone through the financials, and it was tough to make money in it after they got done with the marketing and these fees. And so I would go through the finance. What's this for? Oh, that's a fee we got. But what's this for? That's got a fee. And in those cases, I knew they were better off just having started it on their own. And then the marketing included discount coupons, but that meant their profitability was going down in those discount coupons. So I think it goes back to really, it always comes back to financials is that whether you're wanting to buy an existing business, buy in a franchise, start a restaurant, start anything at all, look at starting out really small, know your numbers, look at profitability, you're signing contracts, do due diligence, and don't always discredit starting from scratch and small as being the not way to go, if I can just say that in proper English.
Yeah.
I think often it is the way to go because it's not causing you to rack up a bunch of debt. It's allowing you to get feedback from the marketplace. It's allowing you to be agile and flexible. And I think that's what the real benefit of being an entrepreneur is being able to put your toe in the water a little bit at the time and then jump in when it makes sense to do so. Your thoughts on that?
I agree 100% on all of that. And I think one thing to add is just really immersing yourself in the industry and talking to as many people as you can, whether it's your competition, other franchisees, um, just people in the industry. Go to trade shows, events, go online, just
Yeah.
research the industry. The due diligence is so, so important. And I might be saying overkill, but it will give you the familiarity before you kind of step in.
So true. I always say don't buy into your own delusional ignorance, right? And when you get excited about something, you got to be an investigative reporter when you ask into these questions. You really got to get your emotions aside and
Yeah.
really, really dig into due diligence. It's so important.
So many of the clients are like, "Yeah, I want to start this." And I'm like, "So what do they don't know who they're because I deal with the business planning. It's, who's your target market? People, and who are your customers? What's your mission? How are you differentiating yourself from your competition? And what's your pricing strategy? What?
Yeah.
I don't know."
Oh, I know. They watch some social media and they're like, "Well, I want to be an entrepreneur."
Yeah.
That's all they know is they want to be an entrepreneur. And the ones that I love that says, and I'm sure you get them, is they go, "I want to be an entrepreneur because I want to have more control over my time and make more money." Have you gotten those? I get those a lot. And I'm like, "Well, honey,
Yeah.
that's not the way to do that."
No, for sure, for sure. And again, it's a lot of people don't understand or, have knowledge. And again, that's why talking to people is so important and understanding.
So in the final minute, and I'm not going to hold you to
Oh,
anything,
a
you can
minute.
even,
We have
yeah,
1 minute
I
left.
know, you can even say, "Lori, I have no friggin' idea." So this is a trick
Okay.
hard question. And you could say, "I have no
Okay.
friggin' idea." Going through the fires and COVID and all that,
Mm,
the restaurant industry was hit hard, especially in Los Angeles, or at least I believe it
yeah.
was from what I saw. Um, do you have any crystal ball thoughts on, do you think there's going to be less brick and mortar, more pops up? What do you think the restaurant industry is going to, any predictions you see or trends you see as it's trying to refigure itself?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's dealing with how do you create different revenue streams. Maybe it's like you said, doing pop-ups or actually branding some of your products. I'm seeing a lot of that, like trying to sell your sauces or food items in the
Yeah.
marketplace. And really looking at your menu and re-engineering your menu items and processes, whether you're a full service restaurant, maybe you're going to go to takeout or delivery or, order at the counter. So you have to adapt to the kind of the increasing cost structures that are happening too. And cross training employees so that they're doing multiple tasks and, just really kind of focusing on all those different areas, maybe more emphasis on tech and tablet ordering and QR codes, which we're seeing a lot more of. Those are, I think, just some of the areas. And I think you'll see a lot of restaurants. I mean, we are seeing a lot of restaurants go out of business, and it's
Yeah.
due to kind of rents. The landlords aren't adjusting and the rents are too much. So they're closing, but then they're opening up these different concepts, whether it's delivery takeout or smaller scale or, kind of food trucks.
I'm seeing the same thing. I think that, as my final words is that I think all small businesses, in my personal opinion, from being at this game for decades, need to recognize that the last 10 years and especially the last 5 years has changed the playing field across the board for pretty much all
Yeah.
businesses. And the news for small businesses is you have to look at it fresh with fresh eyes and reanalyze, rebudget, refinance, reimagine what the world will look like. And the greatest news for entrepreneurs is the last 5, 10 years is different than it ever was. I think it is both a necessity to reevaluate and reassess, but it's also an opening the door to new ways of thinking and new opportunity. Like maybe it was back in the 30s, 40s. I wasn't alive, obviously, but I think we got that turning point in business again, where there's a wonderful opportunity for ingenuity, flexibility, efficiencies, where there's going to be a new person that or new company that gets to the top, not the ones that did in the past. Any last thoughts as we close it up for today, Craig?
No, I mean, this was great. I enjoyed talking and kind of getting my story out. Again, I'm here to help everyone on here, so please reach out to the SBDC. You can get one-on-one advising on opening your restaurant or food space or anything. So please, I enjoyed talking to you and everybody's feedback.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again. I
Yeah,
I had to reach out to Craig. He's one of the fellow advisors I've seen on our
yes,
monthly meetings, and I never had him on the show. And I was like, we got to find out who's Craig and what's he all about. Annie, thanks for being here. She's in the chat. So if you want to
yes.
schedule an appointment with Craig, Annie's in the chat. She's got the website there. Just email and get an appointment with Craig or any of the other great advisors we have. So I'm going to get Sadie, come on back on the show to close us up here. And like always, Sadie is going to stay on after we say goodbye to make sure you get the information in the chat. You can close out your conversations and you're here. So any last words before we leave, Sadie?
Wow, what an adventure. I mean, I learned so much, and it's like I'll turn in a personal note because we all have a little personal note. But I caught this series called like Great Brands That Made America. And Craig like literally took me on this journey where I'm like, we're in times of innovation again. Like this is how we move forward, innovation.
It
Yeah.
absolutely is. Well, Craig, thank you again for coming on the
Thank
show.
you.
Thank you to my frequent flyers who are here all the time, especially during the summer months. And if you are new to the show, please tune in next week to Small Biz Talk with your host, Lori Williams. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. All right, guys, let me know if you need anything. I'm going to be here. I'm going to put myself on mute, but I put all the links in for you guys for all the webinars, contacts, all that great stuff. So do a little scroll in the chat. And if there's just something in particular that you do not see, let me know so I can drop that back in there for you. All righty?